everyone.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi.
hi. My name is Ebony Underwood. This is We Got Us Now, and today we are talking about why voting in local elections matter. I'm here with two wonderful guests. I'm very excited to be speaking with them today. I'm here with Amanda Farias. She's the New York City Council candidate in the 18th district of the Bronx. And I'm also here with Dom Leon Davis. He is the Digital Voter Mobilization Director at MoveOn. Welcome you both. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
for having
having
us.
us.
Yes, of course, of course. Really excited to be talking to you guys to have this conversation. Before we begin, though, I want to just welcome everybody and kind of give them a quick background on We Got Us Now. So, our intention tonight in this conversation is to have a really informative, educational conversation highlighting the top reasons why local elections matter. We Got Us Now is a national nonprofit organization built by, led by, and about children and young adults impacted by parental incarceration. And our mission is solely revolved around four guiding principles: to engage, educate, elevate, and empower our historically invisible population of children and young adults who've been impacted by parental incarceration through the use of digital narratives, safe and inclusive spaces, advocacy led campaigns, and conversations like these, like this one that we're going to have tonight, to ensure that our voices are at the forefront of like strategic initiatives that are happening, practices and policies that are, coming forth and being implemented so that we can help to keep our families connected. We can create fair sentencing. And ultimately, what we'd like to be able to do is end mass incarceration. So before I get into all of that, I just want to give a brief, bio of each of you guys. I'm going to read your bios. So I'll start with Amanda. Amanda Farias is a lifelong Bronxite with a passion for public service. She was born and raised in the Soundview neighborhoods of the Bronx, New York. Amanda is a second generation Afro Latina of Puerto Rican and Dominican descent. Amanda ran to be the state committee woman of the 87th Assembly District in September 2018, winning by 86 votes. Amanda defeated a 20-year incumbent and was elected as the state committee woman of the 87th AD. She has continued to advocate for a genuinely progressive New York. She is committed to running again for the 18th City Council seat and investing in uplifting other women by working to get more women into elected office, by creating a pipeline for them through her work as New York State Coordinator for New American Leaders and as the co-founder of Women of Color for Progress. Amanda is present in her community as an organizer and local leader. As state committee woman, she has continued to offer programs and resources that increase participation and foster community. She's excited to continue to expand upon the work that she has focused on once elected to the city council and is committed to serving her constituents in the 18th City Council district. Now we'll move on to Dom Leon Davis, who is the Digital Voter Mobilization Director at MoveOn. Dom Leon Davis is a political organizer focusing on mobilizing and empowering Black and Brown communities. He's currently serving as the Digital Voter Mobilization Director for MoveOn.org, and he has worked at every level of politics, previously serving as National Digital Organizing Director for Cory Booker's 2020 presidential campaign. He also was a strategic communications director to Michael Blake's New York City Public Advocate campaign and the deputy digital director for Stacey Abrams' 2018 gubernatorial campaign. Dom also served as New York Communications Director for Working Families Party, where he supported numerous statewide and local races, as well as progressive policies in the state legislature. A native of Bowie, Maryland, he gained his first experience in policy working for Maryland state legislators, and he has served on the boards of New Leaders Council New York City and Good Shepherd Services. You all have, wow, a long history in, politics, and I'm just, again, very proud to be in conversation with you and to really to learn from you. um, I come into this work as a directly impacted daughter of an incarcerated parent. My father's been incarcerated for the last 32 years, and I just, because of his incarceration and him fighting to try to come home for so long, a lot of what I understood now as an adult was that we needed to like work to change policy. We need to advocate to change policy. The way in which we do it at We Got Us Now is really through primarily sharing our stories, but we need to do more. And so, I want this to be a conversation, as I shared with you both earlier. So to kick off this conversation, we all know that the personal is political, and especially today, oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
So
sure.
I'll start. I'll do ladies first, Dom, and I'll start with Amanda and ask, what led you to get involved in politics? Can you tell us a little bit about your professional trajectory?
Yeah, for sure. And thank you so much for the intro. I'm a product of the Bronx, and, going to local schools and the hard work and just knowing and understanding the hard work and sacrifice from a single parent household, right? I grew up with a single mom, and no one in my family at all was political. I mean, the only experience I personally have remembering some level of voting was going to pull the lever with my grandmother at the poll sites. um, so my introduction to politics dates back to over a decade of my own personal work from college to now. And sorry, from college to now. Sorry, I think I cut out a little bit.
No, you're good. You're good.
Um, Back in college, I ran a local campaign in Queens, and that was really kind of like my first introduction while attending St. John's University. Really being able to have that experience and open my eyes to how the local is personal, and like everything that my family was struggling with, that my community was dealing with, or really just the struggle and sacrifice that people have had to make, really tied back to the local elected official, that, one of the people that I was even just trying to help get into office. Flash forward from college to really in 2012, I had an amazing privilege on working on Barack Obama's reelection campaign in Denver, Colorado, continuing the work to fight against voter suppression and mobilizing Black and Latinx communities for Barack Obama. That really inspired me to continue to empower our communities. We were seeing way different forms of voter suppression in Colorado than we were here, but they were aimed to do the same thing in keeping us out of a system that already was doing that and doing a good job at that. Um, and so I did a bunch of things. It was a lot of mobilization work, a lot of voter registration, really a lot of explaining the ballots. We were super fortunate that Colorado at the time had mail-in ballots. So people were getting them at home and not realizing it wasn't a fraudulent piece of mail, right? So really just the education piece, understanding to bring that in and how to fill it out, helping even translate. The ballot was only in English. So the Latinx communities did not, there were folks that just did not know actually how to complete it correctly. And that brought me back home. I realized that all of these issues were happening right in my own backyard. And so I came back to work at the New York City Council for about 5 years. I worked as a director for special projects, and I really was able to learn the ins and outs of a governmental system. So I went from understanding why it was so important to have people voting these people in, but now understanding like, oh, it actually there's an entire oppressive system that really depends on an elected and people in a community to call out the issues that they're dealing with every day to ensure that they actually get rectified, because there's city agencies with budgets and different policies that we can put in to amend those to make life easier and to help people live lives with dignity. And those are really, between that work, moving towards being able to see there were not enough BIPOC folks in the electoral system, but also in the government system, right? We did not have Black, Latinx, New American folks in these spaces. And so that's what, proactively pushed me to work with other women of color specifically, to start Women of Color for Progress in 2016. I mean, all of that really pushed me in 2017 to make a decision to run for local office in my community. It was definitely hard losing the first time, but I saw so many volunteers and so many people in the community really invested in the process, really invested in seeing someone that was born and raised in that community, someone that they even helped grow up, tried to run for that seat. And so since the loss of my first waves, I just have kept going and have kept bringing people with me. So as you mentioned, I did win my state committee seat just by 86 votes and got reelected this year. But in this, yeah, I mean, it's been a long time coming, but what all of this has brought me to is like this past election cycle, I was able to get people on county committee, get people as other state committee members, district leaders, help other women of color win their state assembly seats. It's given me enough to want to keep fighting and to bring people with me and help uplift others. And I think that's really been the focal point of my professional life, is like building that bench and like and fighting against the voter suppression and the oppressive system that we have.
Thank you so much. So I noticed that you worked in local and national, right? So that's so important.
Yeah.
This conversation, because WeGotUsNow is a national organization. So being able to understand it from the local perspective as well as the national perspective or the federal perspective is a big deal. So Dom, I'll ask you the same questions, and then I want to go back and kind of give you guys like the whole purpose of this conversation, because I really want it to be conversational amongst us all. So Dom, I'll ask you the same question. So as we said, the personal is political, and we want to know what led you to get involved in politics, and tell us about your professional trajectory.
Certainly. Oh, first of all, again, thank you for having me on. It's such a good opportunity just to talk to you. And I love the work that you do with WeGotUsNow. I got into politics really. What I always say is that politics was always in my backyard. So I grew up in a suburb of DC, in Prince George's County, Maryland. And so it's literally like 30 minutes away, is like the nation's capital. Politics was always kind of like a stone's throw away. But I think for me, growing up with a single Black mother who struggled to raise me and to provide a life for me, to me, there was this massive disconnect between the folks who worked 30 minutes away and made decisions that affected the nation, and then the experience that my mom had of trying to put food on the table. And I think that my first couple of of indications that there was a disconnect, was watching the news and hearing about things happening 30 minutes down the road and decisions that were being made. And the first government shutdowns, my mom was wondering, okay, am I going to be, how long am I going to be furloughed for? How long am I going to be out of work and not getting a paycheck? That to me was the first indication of, okay, something's wrong here. Like my mom, who works for the federal government and worked for the federal government for 35 years, should not be worrying where her check is going to come from. But these men who, want to, play games and decide, that government workers get to be the pawns in this game, have no vested interest in our well-being. So that was one of the first kind of real moments for me where I was like, okay, this is all politics. This is all about who's in charge. But also, I think I was fortunate that I had a number of individuals in my life who saw the importance of local politics. My mom, when we moved into our house, got involved with the local homeowners association. At one point was vice president of the homeowners association, and seeing even like hyper local ordinances that were unjustly or unfairly enforced, or enforced for some but not for others. Being fined for having grass too high, but the house in the corner, the biggest house in the corner, they can let it go for months and months and not get fined. Seeing the discrepancies there and the impact that has on families, and then when we go to these school board meetings, and my mom decided after middle school to pull me out of a public school because there was there was no investment in the school system, but seeing her going to these meetings and fighting and not getting all the things that our schools needed, I realized that there were issues happening at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level that were just affecting our everyday lives. But then again, like I said, we had these people. We had a neighbor who was actually a county councilwoman, who my mom got to know somehow. I don't remember exactly how the relationship started, but she actually would, come around and talk to me about the things that they were discussing in county council, and I was so fascinated by it. But I didn't actually get started with politics until I got out of the Navy, and I separated from the Navy. I was actually separated from the Navy 3 months before the end of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, right before it was repealed. And I was in during that time, as a closeted gay man, trying to figure out what my life was, coming to terms with my own identity. And when I left, I was, trying to figure out my life. And I was fortunate enough to go volunteer for my state delegate who was running for re-election, just because I needed something to do. I was, out of the military. I didn't have a job, wasn't in school, and so I went to go volunteer. And after he won re-election, he said, "Hey, I need an intern. Do you want to come work for me?" And so I jumped at the opportunity. I went and started out filing papers, and was within a couple of weeks was running bills around the House of Delegates, getting different sponsors for the bills. And it was my first look into the legislative process. It still wasn't connecting for me just how important the work was not just how important the work was to me personally, and how what these bills were doing affected me until the marriage equality bill came up in Maryland. And I saw my boss ended up being the swing vote that actually got the bill defeated, because his state senator for his district told him that if he supported it, because he was a pastor of a Black evangelical church, and so that if you support this bill, you won't win re-election when it comes around in 2 years. And so seeing that political pressure and how it actually affected the lives of so many people, including people like me, I said, oh, okay, this is what this game is all about. And so I actually got really disenchanted. I left. I was like, I'm done. I'm good. Then 2016 came around. And so I started out as a volunteer, just showing up. I had moved to New York. And I was like, let me just figure out getting involved. Because I worked in the Maryland State Legislature, I had gotten to know some of the work of Governor O'Malley. He had thrown his hat in the ring for president. And I was like, let me volunteer a little bit. Showed up at a meeting, and then a week later, I was the state volunteer coordinator. It kind of happened like that, because it was.
I'm sorry to interject, but is that how it is? It's just like,
sometimes
a lot of people aren't involved, and it's just like, these opportunities come up. So
yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I know that are professional political organizers or candidates who just started out just as a volunteer, just like, let me just show up at a meeting. I literally showed up at a meeting, and I got a call while I was at dinner a week later, and they were like, we would really love to have you coordinate our volunteers across the state. And I was like, I have no idea what that means, but sure. And I remember the night of the first primary debate, I was making graphics and running a Twitter account for a New York, we didn't have an actual New York organization. It was all volunteer led, but I was making graphics. I was, tweeting, live tweeting what his stances were, and, reading up on his policies and translating that. So, and so I was like, well, this is great. This is, amazing. And I was doing this all, in my free time. And then right after the Iowa caucus, he dropped out. And then I was kind of like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing now, but I got the bug. I got to stick with it.
Right.
I ended up going to organize for Hillary in Florida. That was my first real feet to the fire, getting people registered, calling voters, talking directly with voters, knocking on doors,
But is there a process? Like, is somebody showing you the way? Like, how are you understanding how to do all of this stuff?
So,
you like just jumped in, like they just kind of threw you in the water. You had to sink or swim.
so yes and no. So, I mean, most political organizations, political campaigns have some kind of volunteer organization. Smaller organizations usually, it's people who have volunteered for a number of campaigns, just kind of know know the ropes and are just showing people the ropes, and then they train the trainers, and they eventually get people who can train others, and it's just passing along skills. And so when I was volunteering for Governor O'Malley's campaign, I was just learning from other folks who had volunteered for campaigns. And every once in a while, we would get a call from a campaign organizer, and they would send somebody up to help us, collect petitions. I remember standing outside of Barclays Center in the middle of a snowstorm collecting signatures. Amanda knows all too well about that. Collecting signatures in the dead of winter.
The worst.
I was thinking, well, if this is what campaigning is, this part is terrible, but at least we're making a difference. And literally learning on the go, like, hey, this is how you collect, and coming back and saying, oh, I had no signatures for the first hour, and then somebody walked up to me and told me keep going, and then they signed my petition, and then from there it was just going, and and hearing other people's feedback and stories, and so I was just learning on the go from that. And then when I went to go organize for Hillary, by the time I went to go work for her, we were a full-fledged national operation. I had a regional organizing director who was teaching me, and my fellow organizers were teaching me. But even then, I showed up at the office the first day, and they're like, "Okay, go hit the phones," and I'm like, "Okay, I'll read the script." And so, after that campaign, after Election Day 2016, it was very hard on all of us. We'd done all this work. I had personally called hundreds of thousands of voters. I had knocked on more doors than I could ever count. I had started to learn Portuguese because I had a Brazilian community in my neighborhood, and was, and needed to be able to connect with folks, and was meeting local leaders so I could, get into, local communities that, that were gated, and all these things. I had built this whole organization of leaders, built, this whole network, I should say, because it wasn't my organization, it's just a network, and connecting people. And then we lost, and I was like, well,
oh, wow.
What do I do from here? And so I was just looking for anything. And so I went to go, I saw an associate, or not associate, but someone that I know. I wouldn't have called him a friend at the time, but he became a friend. Guy by the name of Michael Blake ended up running for DNC vice chair. I was just like, hey, can I get involved? How can I help? Started out by correcting some typos on his bio on his website. And that turned into me becoming the deputy press secretary. Because at that point I had kind of gotten into writing, and was doing what we call field pitches, when you're introducing a surrogate, like someone who will come down and speak for the candidate. I started introducing surrogates, and then saying, now get involved, now sign up for a door knocking shift. So I'd gotten into speech writing a little bit. So I was speech writing, and I was doing press work. And was ended up becoming his communications director for about a year. Hit a little bit of a ceiling there. I was like, I got the bug now. I want to get back into campaigning, and I want to learn more. So I went to go work for Working Families Party. There was specific work that I wanted to do around a statewide office, or around statewide races. And we'll talk a little bit, as we talk about local elections. One of the things I want to
I know, y'all. It's 7:30, so I was like, "Oh my gosh, we maybe go over." We originally discussed it. I don't know what you guys' time is like.
I can talk. I can talk, but I'm gonna wrap it up because I know I can talk forever. But there was a set of races, and Amanda will know exactly what I'm talking about. There was a set of 8 races that I wanted to work on, specifically called the IDC. I wanted to overturn, or I wanted to defeat these 8 state senators who were hampering all the progress that progressives were trying to make in New York. And the biggest organization working on it was an organization called Working Families Party. So I went and did communications for them. We beat the IDC. We elected some really progressive candidates who are just superstars in the New York State legislature. And then I got a call to go to come to Atlanta. I live in Atlanta now. To come to Atlanta and work for Stacey Abrams. We built a campaign that shocked the world. We fell short. With an asterisk, we fell short because of voter suppression and people being prevented from exercising their constitutional right to vote. But we expanded the electorate in Georgia. We changed the face of what politics and political engagement, civic engagement looks like in this state.
And across the country too, I have to say.
And across the country.
Everybody knew
for sure.
Stacey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and then after that, got another call to go work on this guy who's over my shoulder, Cory Booker.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of the political trajectory. Now I'm at MoveOn, helping mobilize voters across the country in like 17 states.
Wow.
But always keeping my focus on local, because like you said, all politics is local. So that's the.
So that makes me think about just like, okay, so the intention for this conversation really was to have it a really informative, educational conversation highlighting, the reason why local elections matter.
Absolutely.
And the fact that both of you all have both worked on both sides, like, I think that's like phenomenal. Yeah. First of all, I think that's huge. That's a big deal, because I think that you have to see, you have to have had that experience on the greater scheme, in the national scale as well as the local, to understand how significant the local is. And Absolutely. So my father's in federal prison, so for me, the national election is a big deal, because if he potentially can get clemency, then that's, always, in my mind frame. But there's so many children of incarcerated parents that have parents that are in jails, or that have parents that are in state prisons, and some of them for decades, right? And so, local elections are really important. Our governors, our, senators, our district attorneys, so many of the people that represent who we are, all these different offices, the judges, so many people that we're, impacted by. So much of it, they're responsible. They can have such an either direct or indirect, and sometimes immediate impact on our daily lives. And so I really just was hoping in this conversation that we could shed some light using examples of how local elections can impact mass incarceration in our communities. I mean, it could go as far as policing, to keeping our neighborhood safe, and the education system. It's such a broad topic. I could talk to you all for hours, actually, but I'm going to try to be as succinct as possible. But okay, I guess I'll ask Amanda, based on your political experience, what do you believe are some of the biggest misconceptions or missteps about local elections?
Yeah, I think you and just even what our intros kind of already touched on it, but I think the biggest misconception is that only the federal elections matter. That is just not real. And I know we get like such a small like civics education growing up, all of us do, right? And it varies per state. But I've worked and supported many campaigns that have only come across a number of people, especially in communities of color, that just don't trust the government, right? Because of the systemic oppression, because of systemic racism that we're dealing with and interacting with every single day. But my response is always, you need to show up for the issues that are impacting you the most. And that is going to be on the local level, in your community. Those are the people that are impacting transportation and housing, school funding, who gets bail, really like even alternatives to incarceration, right? That all happens at the local level. And so I think, specifically for me, what I've been trying to hone in on over the last couple of years in my state committee role, it's been trying to demystify who are the judges, what's the level of court systems and what are their responsibilities? To be very honest, here in New York City, it is almost as if you get no education or no, not even a bio, a line. They're not responsible for letting anyone know who they are, but they show up on the ballot and people have to, pick, well, not have to, but people end up choosing them, right? And then that's when like identity politics plays a role. That's where you end up having a non-democratic system, because that means a smaller amount of people are deciding who do our kids get to go in front of as a judge, right? So for 2021, at least in New York City, I've been, really trying to focus on explaining what the ballot's going to look like. We have mayor to public advocate, comptroller, borough presidents, city council, and judges. And in this November 3rd, we actually in the Bronx have the chance to elect 3 new judges to the Supreme Court of New York.
Wow.
And so I've been trying to talk about who they are. I've also been trying to research who some of them are, because even someone like me who's that engaged doesn't always have access to all of the information either. And so I think, definitely trying to our best of our ability to focus on not every 4 years for the federal level elections, but really looking at what do our school board elections look like, our city council election looks like, and how do we research these people like judges and Supreme Justices that are impacting our daily lives.
Such an important conversation. Gosh, it's so true, right? So much of it, and you're so engaged, like you said, and you often that's horrific actually, that we don't have any information about some of these people. Like, how is that even acceptable?
I mean, it isn't. I mean, and you know what? A part of me always feels like, as someone that is technically like in an elected role as state committee woman, it's now my civic duty and my responsibility to try to get out as much information to voters as I possibly can in this capacity. And I think that's the pressure that needs to be put on elected officials now. If you know who these judges are, then you should be talking about them daily in an unbiased manner, just so people know and can make decisions in their own capacity.
It's so true. It's so true. Dom, I would pose the same question to you. What do you believe are some of the missteps or misconceptions about local elections that people just don't get?
I would say, even from like a logistical standpoint, people don't realize that sometimes these elections don't happen in presidential years. People think we only vote every 4 years. You know, and I mean, even when I was living in New York, we had an election basically every year, right? And so like, we have, yes, every 4 years we elect a president, but those years we also elect, state legislatures, we elect our judges, we elect district attorneys, we elect, I'm trying to think of non-local folks, but that's just who we elect on those years. And then every 2 years we still elect congressional members, we elect state assembly or state house, state senators. And then in off years, and especially in cities like New York, you have local elections. You decide who your local committee, county committee, state committee, folks who are setting, not necessarily, like policy, but are setting forth the direction that the city is going to go, that the county is going to go in, as far as here's what we want to see on the next on our platforms, as far as what's going to go forward for judges. We decide who our city council members are going to be. We decide who our mayors are going to be. And so realizing that, people, I think we're so often so inundated from like a media standpoint of, every 4 years we elect a president, that people tune out what happens every 2 years and every, in off-year elections. And so I think, again, just a big misconception is just how you stay engaged, or a misstep is, how we stay engaged. I tell people all the time, turn the TV off when you're seeing, especially, this close to an election, turn it off. You already know who you're going to vote for in this year's election. Start, especially folks living in New York, start looking at next year, start getting involved in next year's campaigns, because city council candidates are already running. Amanda's already already announced, already up and running, right? Get involved in those campaigns. Start figuring out who you're going to vote for, what judges you're going to vote for. Start looking at the record of the judges that are incumbents. That way when you go to the ballot box, they're not an afterthought. When you print out your sample ballot, you're not like, oh, okay, I don't know who these people are. I guess I'll just pick one. This one seems fine. I haven't heard anything bad. Go and research their record. Find out what judgments they've made. If you
sometimes, I'm sorry not to cut you off, but I just want to say to engage in what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you find out about these people literally when you are at the voting booth.
In the ballot box.
Yep. Yeah, like it's like, what? I don't even know who this person is. So I did that. I remember one year literally like Googling, like, who is this person? And I'm like, how much time do I really have to find out who this person is? Yeah, you bring up such a good point about how do we find out? And then, okay, we're just talking about New York. Mm-hmm. This is national. Like, so every state is different, right?
Every state is different. And that's what I tell people all the time. At the beginning of every year, first of all, make sure you mark on your calendar, like set reminders for yourself when election day is, the beginning of every year, so that you know when election day is. Because I have people talking about, I'll make sure I vote by November 9th. Oh, November 9th is 6 days after election day. Like,
oh wow.
The election will have been over by 6 days from then. And the election has been happening now. People have been voting for weeks at this point.
Right.
First of all, know when election day is, but also then, make reminders to yourself to at least 30 days out. If you need to request an absentee ballot, then do that. Make sure you, request a sample, find a sample ballot either from your local board of elections, or, there's a lot of, nonprofit organizations, political action committees that will send you a sample ballot and tell you who the candidates on the ballot are. Depending on which state you're in. I think some states don't provide sample ballots. Most of them do, but know who's going to be on the ballot before you get there. Take the time to do the research. And it's not fun. Trust me, I work in elections, and I literally have to set an appointment with my husband and our roommate on Wednesday and say, let's sit down and talk about who's on the ballot that we're going to go vote for on Thursday when we go early vote. And it's not fun. There are candidates who I don't know that are literally like, this is the work that I do and I don't know. I tell people you have to make the decision to be engaged, because these people that we elect have such an impact on your life.
Right. That brings me to our, basically, you guys, we are answering so many of the questions that I was going to ask. We all know that COVID has definitely played a humongous part, and just in the way we've been able to vote, and people are now being much more engaged and are voting via mail in all different ways. But just to kind of to piggyback off of what you were just saying, Dom, and thinking about how, not only for new voters, but for people like myself that have voted, definitely in the past, but just aren't aware of like how, well, I now know how important the local elections are, but like just finding out who these people are and when to begin to, like, where do we start? Like, okay, just say if we were talking to the United States, right? We're talking to everybody in the United States and we're talking about local elections. Where do people start? Because it's different for every person. Is there like a methodology that you all can describe about like, how do we even start?
Yeah. Do you mind if I jump in? I would say, I think for a lot of, for folks, a lot of the first places to start is like the two, I guess, party county administrations. So usually like the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and every other party will have websites that just show who their elected leaders are. So like the first step could even just be finding those people and then researching them, or looking at their bios there to say, what have they done? How long have they been in serving the community? Do they have term limits? All of those things, and being able to connect back to their legislative websites to see their bills and to see if they have staff, and to find the numbers so you can hold them accountable and reach out to them to meet them, or to give them any issues in the district. So I would say, like, if you're starting from nowhere or even just jumping back in, like the first place would be find out your elected leadership and then find out what election cycle you're in to pair those two things up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I'd say that's spot on. And I also, I recommend to people that they check local, like their local media, because so often we're watching CNN, MSNBC for like our political news, but the local papers, the local outlets are usually the ones that are covering local races, and they will be the ones who, at the beginning of the election cycle, will say, "Here's who on the ballot," or "Here's the offices that are up for election this year. Here is who's running so far," or "Here is here are the candidates that have thrown their hat in the ring. Here's who the incumbents are," and some nonpartisan notes about their record, right? And so definitely start looking at googling the local Gazette or Bee or whatever the local paper is for your neighborhood, for your county, for your city, and that will have a lot of that information as well.
Yeah, that's so important. I mean, if you're saying that every year there's someone that's running for an office, it's just like
potentially.
You have to always be informed. Like there has to be a space where we can always look. So I guess newspapers, guys, I guess, listen to your local, your local news, your local newspapers. I guess online. Is there a place online? I guess MoveOn.
Yeah, right? Or
yeah,
like
actually,
your board of elections.
Yes. Well, so I mean, local boards of elections will tell you what offices are up for election that year. But there are some national orgs. I believe Vote.org usually has a tool where you can find out local offices that are up for election. MoveOn is pretty good about more politically. We're usually not nonpartisan, so we're kind of like, we're going to pick certain races to get involved in, but we do, we do try to make sure that people know about local races as much as possible, especially in off-year elections. Okay. I would say that this part is hard, right? Like the constantly being engaged part is hard, but the secret about this is that it's designed to be hard.
Right.
And the reason why it's designed to be hard is because the people who are the most engaged in this, the people who are most aware, are the ones who benefit the most from this system. And so the way that we flip it on its head is by playing that game and saying, "Oh, I'm gonna know every time a local elected is up for re-election, and I'm going to make sure that everybody that I know comes with me to vote." So that way it's not just the 200 people that live in the gated community that decide who my local city council member is. And like, I'm thinking city council, like the town that I grew up in, something like those, that's like 1,000 person election. Who decides a city council member? Like those 1,000 people get to make the power, get to decide tax structures and who gets whether or not. I think in my hometown they just decided on affordable housing, and those 1,000 people got to decide whether or not we got affordable housing. And some folks were, "Oh well, we don't want affordable housing folks in our neighborhood," and luckily they turned out enough folks that they decided they got people who voted yes on affordable housing. But those 1,000 people called all the shots in that election. And so when we actually turn up and turn out, then we get to take back that power and say, actually, we're part of that decision-making process as well. So it's designed to be hard, but the more we stay involved, the more power we have in these local elections.
Okay, so then I have another very deep question for you guys, for you both. what advice do you have for children of incarcerated parents or young adults that have had parents that are incarcerated or that are experienced this? Some of us have had parents that have come home already, but just understanding like how so much of the impact of this still affects us. Um, even in, having your parent return and just understanding what that separation has done, how could they be potentially helpful in reshaping some of these criminal justice laws? Do you all have any advice for that?
Amanda, do you want to go? Or
You can go. I'll go
okay,
after. We can swap.
yeah, no, all good. I would say the first part is knowing who has the power, and especially when it comes to your parents' case, to your parents. Is your parent incarcerated in state prison versus a local jail? Are they in a local jail? Are they in a federal prison? Because that level matters, because in those stakeholders or those power players, are at different levels. And so, for instance, like when my father was incarcerated, he was in a federal. No, I had no, like, the only person that could actually do anything about that was the president
I
himself.
didn't know your father was incarcerated. You're part of the We Got Us Now family. That's what's up.
my father was incarcerated in federal prison.
Wow.
Oof,
No,
I was young. I was young.
no,
Um,
you have to tell.
but when I was working in New York, working for Working Families Party, we were working to close Rikers. And Rikers is a local jail that, people don't realize, like, it's a local jail that's for the city, but because the city's so large, there's so many people there, and so many those people are there, but have never been convicted of a crime,
Yeah.
right? And so, especially in the middle of COVID, the federal we already know the federal government isn't doing anything for anybody when it comes to COVID, but our state legislatures, folks who are in state prisons, we can lobby our state legislators to pass legislation to move on things like compassionate release. We can lobby our city council members and mandate that mandate compassionate release for those who qualify. And so I would say, know who the power players are. And
I can tell you who they are. They're the judges. They're the
mhm,
prosecutors. They're
exactly.
the prosecutors and judges. Like the prosecutors are the doorway for us,
Mhm,
literally. And then the judges, make the final decision. But then it's also the people, because then
yeah.
you have a jury that, convicts people and separates families. So they too need to be informed. But if we're talking about people that are elected into office, it's
Mhm,
definitely the prosecutors, the district attorneys, and
absolutely.
definitely the judges and the sheriffs for people across the country. It's the sheriffs. So
Mm-hmm.
many of these different people play such a huge role in how we're impacted. So, I know that for sure. But, when I think about this, like, when are prosecutors going up for election? Like, when are judges going up for election? It's just like you just have to be informed.
Yeah.
It sounds like a really daunting task, to be honest with you, but I think it's important. It's an important conversation to have. And you shared that, Dom, that you were able to do it together, with your husband and your roommate. And I think that's important. I think families need to talk about that, right? Like
Mhm,
like Amanda, you were saying, like so many people in your community were able to be able to support you because they saw you. So if they had issues, maybe there were things personally that they could have shared with you, and
Mm-hmm.
then be engaged now with somebody that's actually in a that they've elected into office. So yeah, it's, to me, it's a daunting process. But Amanda, I'll let you answer, or if you have any suggestions for, like, or tips for any new voters or young people that are voting.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, I have not experienced parental incarceration, but I have had relatives that have been incarcerated. And I think, like how you're mentioning, the people that I've helped in the community found ways to relate to me. Like similarly, like I remember the long drives to see my cousin when he was incarcerated, even, relating to the financial cost of calls and commissary and and all of that, even with my family, us trying to be that support system. And even then, I know that it doesn't compare to the pain that some of the viewers and, you know, some of your members have been through. I think for me, um, what I would say to children of incarcerated parents is that, like, you have a level of experience and expertise that is so desperately needed at the policy level and decision making table. You know, the same way we're asking you to engage to just go vote is the same way that we want you to show up to those people in those rooms and make sure they bring you a chair. Um, there are a ton of organizers involved, like on the issue related level of ending mass incarceration, bail reform, all of those things. But as children of incarcerated parents, y'all are bringing a new perspective, a unique perspective, and so it's important to get involved. And I think, like, what we haven't really said is like showing up to the local community board meetings, showing up to the city council, the state senate, state assembly hearings, public hearings that are open to where you can walk through that door and testify, right, of your own personal experience, and request those meetings with those elected officials, and then, you know, even do what I'm doing, run for office. It's important, right? Like, it's important to, if you don't see what's happening around you, to be that change that you want to see. And so you can step up and be a community board member. You can step up and run at the party level of whatever party you're a part of, um, and or you can run for a higher office if you wanna change the system yourself. So
You're so right
yeah,
about that, running to the community board, because that's what I did when I was younger. It's true. The community
yeah,
boards are like a great starting space to get involved and just kind of know what's happening. But even testifying, I didn't even think about that. Those are great suggestions. You all gave both really great suggestions around that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's important for us to know, because I really feel like we just don't know. So many of us just don't know. As y'all know, we just don't know. So if we can inform people as much as possible, then yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. If I may interject real quick, I love the point that you brought up. Um, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that ordinary folks don't have what it takes to be powerful in this process, right? So many of the local candidates that I know are just folks who got fed up with what they were seeing in their neighborhoods and like, I got to do something. And
Mhm.
you know, if it's running for school, like running for a local school board, running for, you know, a community board, running for PTA, like running for
Right.
just run for whatever you think is going to make the difference in the issues that affect your lives. And you may not, you know, you may not win the first time. You may, you know, but you may not win the first time. You may decide that running is not, but you know, it's not the thing for you. But even showing up to meetings, telling your personal story. I'm a huge believer in the power of personal narrative.
Yep.
Showing up and making your story known and making your voice heard is so powerful. And that's actually how people get to know the personal, um, you know, effect that so many of these policies have, because people who set policy often do it in a vacuum, and they don't hear, you know, when they don't hear from folks who are personally affected, they're just, you know, thinking about, well, what makes the most sense financially. What is, you know, what do the analysts say that the you know that this is going to have, you know, this is going to have on tax dollars, and or, you know, how are we saving money, or how are we, and so much comes down to money, but you know, how are
Mhm.
we, you know, what is the, how does this poll amongst you know, a very small group of people, but when they hear the power, you know, hear personal narratives and see the power that you know that this has, it really, it makes it personal. Like you said, all politics is personal, and so when you go and lobby somebody, and lobby doesn't mean being a high power attorney that goes and asks for things on behalf of a corporation. It literally means being a regular person and showing up at a policymaker's door and saying, I want you to change this law because it affects my life and the lives of those that I love. in these ways. That's lobbying. When I worked in the Maryland State Legislature, the lobbyists that I talked to, I didn't let corporate lobby, like we didn't let corporate lobbyists in. It was I wanted to talk to people, to real people, and find out how like the bills that we were passing, how you know, improving childhood nutrition bills were affecting people's lives. Um, you know, knowing how criminal justice reform bills would help get someone's parents out of jail faster. And so, I want to just really reinforce this fact that us as individuals, we have power. Like, and our power is not just in our vote. Yes, like our vote matters. Our vote has power, but our personal stories have power. And when we decide to step up and be a part of the process through voting or through running, that's when we really that's when we like start flexing on people and like, oh, I actually have power, and to like make a difference in this.
You are so right. I mean, I wholeheartedly believe that. I think all of us here can are a testament to the power of our stories and being able to, basically excel and be in where we are because of our personal stories and being able to share those personal experiences and wanting to help serve our community in the process, right? So WeGotUsNow is a nonprofit, so we don't lobby, but that does not mean that young people can't go out and become lobbyists. Like, what is that? What is that? What does that even look like? So just thank you for bringing that up, because I think that is an important role for young people that are impacted, to be able to do. I know beyond voting, as you shared, there is our stories as well that can have a huge and tremendous impact on changing narratives and really pushing policy. So I wanted to just share that in addition to voting, what are some other ways in which our community members can support local candidates whose campaigns align with our values and our priorities? For me, what I understand is that it goes beyond voting. From what I've seen from different cultural groups, a lot of them support them monetarily. Like it goes beyond a little bit of the vote. It's not just, okay, I got your vote, but you have to go out and support. And if it's $5 or whatever, I think it's really important to support other people that's doing this work. So what do you all have to say about that? What do you all suggest?
Yeah, I would definitely always lead off with saying donate to a candidate. I mean, and donate to a candidate that represents your values. That is really important. I mean, there are a few states throughout the US that have what New York City has, which is a matching program. So a $10 donation is actually $90. So you can actually donate really little but have a massive impact. And I think Dom and I both have shown like volunteering can lead to a lot of things in a campaign and being super active. But I think one of the things that we didn't get to touch on, and I wanted to mention this on like kind of like a tip, but also other ways to get involved, is really the informative level is knowing whether or not you actually get to choose your candidate by seeing if your state has an open or closed primary system. So here in New York, we have closed primaries. So if you're just voting in the general, your candidates are already chosen for you. You're really not getting a true democratic choice or voice in the process. But knowing when the voter deadlines are, knowing that you have to pick a party to vote in a primary to select out of all the Democrats or all the Republicans is really key in voting with your values and your priorities, because you're gonna get to choose the person that represents those.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a great point, and something we didn't get to touch on. People forget to vote in primaries all the time. The scale of general election turnout to primary turnout that I see in elections every year is staggering to me. And like I said, it's a few people deciding who the candidates are going to be on the general election ballot that are making all that difference. And so, again, when you decide to truly be involved and decide I'm going to show up for the primary and decide who the candidate is going to be on the general election ballot and then go and vote for that person again during the general election, you make that much more of a difference. So that's one, I think, a great point. I think one of the things that people don't realize about donating, it's not just about giving money for the sake of giving money. Yes, you're helping helping someone run their campaign and get up on the, get ads up on TV and print mail and pay vendors so that they can make phone calls and all those things. But people don't realize too is that the money that you donate actually has power, especially in states like in New York and other localities where you have matching programs. When you donate, the more people get, the more that regular people donate to candidates, the less beholden those candidates are to private prison organizations, private prison companies, or the oil industry, or industries that have an interest that can put money into campaigns to then influence policy. And so when people are when lawmakers are beholden to the people because they're the ones funding and supporting them, they're that much more likely to vote in the interest of the people. So donating is absolutely important, but also yes, volunteering, because campaigns don't and candidates don't get elected without volunteers. We in New York, in order to get on the ballot, in order to literally have your name appear on the ballot, you have to collect signatures. And candidates don't do that alone. Amanda, I don't think you're not collecting signatures to get on the ballot alone.
Definitely not.
It's literally people, taking 2 or 3 hours on a Saturday and going and knocking on doors or standing in a high traffic area and asking people, for a signature to get on the ballot. And it's a little harder right now during COVID, admittedly. Right. It's going to be interesting to see what that looks like. But in non-COVID years, that makes a big difference. And even in states that don't have ballot access, and there are a lot of states that have it. It's kind of crazy. But in states that don't have ballot access, knocking on doors and just talking to voters, having regular conversations, talking to just regular people, saying, this is why I support this candidate. They represent my values in these ways. Makes a big difference. Calling voters. There's now all these texting programs. I'm running a program now where we're texting like 30 million voters across the country, like that, and it's just volunteers sending text. It's literally just people-powered texting. Wow. It makes a big difference, and the response that we see, even for local candidates. People saying, oh, I had no idea that this person was on the ballot. So thank you for letting me know. That goes a long way in increasing turnout and getting people to actually show up and vote. So yeah, I would say find candidates that represent your values, go volunteer, donate, and then tell your story. Use the power of social media to say, even if I can't volunteer, I want people to know, I want people that follow me to know that I support this candidate because of these issues, because they support defunding the police. They support, closing overcrowded prisons. They support, this candidate is, wants to decriminalize marijuana so that, we're not locking up whole generations of Black and brown people. Using your platforms and your story to show support actually goes a long way as well, especially for people like me who are constantly looking for stories to amplify with on larger platforms. I love it. I love when I see people telling those stories.
Thank you for saying that, because so many of our young people aren't at the age in which they can vote. So a lot of times they want to know, like, what can I be doing? So yeah, if it's just a matter of sharing your story and just that's part of civil engagement, right? Mm-hmm. That's part of just getting started. It's just me. I was supporting WeGotUsNow, and I shared my story on the platform, and we were able to help support some of the advocacy that's happening across the country and some of the organizations that are working to support some of these policies that we're pushing forth and advocating for. So.
Sorry, can I just quickly say that, volunteering and working on a campaign is great. Even as a young person, like, I just want to say I'm a relatively young candidate. I am 31 and I don't know how to use TikTok. So having young people on the campaign, you know what I mean? Like having young people on the campaign, I won't download TikTok, but to like be on your TikTok or to like show me how to do something, things like that. Like things are moving, and you know, we need diversity on campaigns. We need the young people to be involved. Local elections are not about the candidates, right? It's about the systemic change that can happen and that we want to see solely when local like elected officials are working side by side with the community, and that includes young people teaching us how to use TikTok, you know.
or Instagram Live.
Right. I got Instagram, but the TikTok thing is not my thing.
It was wonderful to talk to you both tonight. I just want to say that this conversation, I just want to put a pin in it, because I feel like we have to have another one. Like there's so much. Like if you all are open,
so much.
Yeah, once everything dies down a little bit, you know, after the holidays, I definitely I really want to be able to revisit this conversation and give it the full breath. I feel like, you know, everybody's probably inundated in this moment, but I want to definitely have a continuation of this conversation, because you all brought up so many different points, and it's like, even for me, I'm overwhelmed with the information. So I can imagine somebody that may not, you know, really have no idea. But we definitely gave some great starting points, and I want to be able to flesh some of them out. It may even like develop into a series, but I want to be able to flesh them out. Oh, I think we do have some comments from YouTube. Amanda is so amazing. Amanda and Dom, thank you both for sharing your wisdom and passion with us. That is absolutely
true.
Yeah, thank you both.
This is so great. Right. Thank you.
I'll just remind everybody that criminal justice reform is not a trend or a hashtag. This movement requires continuous action. And please sign up to be part of our We Got Us Now community. You can go to WeGotUsNow.org and join the movement. We also have a petition to protect our parents behind bars. It's change.org/protect our parents. You can also purchase a hoodie from our merch shop. All proceeds from our hoodies, our t-shirts, any of our merch goes directly, 100% of the proceeds goes directly to We Got Us Now and all the advocacy work that we're doing to support children and young adults impacted by parental incarceration. And last thing I'll tell you is to donate to We Got Us Now and go vote. Go vote.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Go vote.
Get your friends and family to vote too, please.
Yes, do it with your families. Yeah, like these wonderful people share
tradition.
Let's make it a tradition. We're gonna come back though. Like I said, we're gonna definitely have more of this conversation, because I think it's important. All right.
For sure.
All right. It was wonderful.
Thank you again.
Thank you all for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Yes.